Okay, so let's get right into it. Today we're going to take a photo from a K-pop performance and connect it to an economic theory that's about 100 years old, all to see what it might be telling us about where the market is headed. I know, it sounds a little wild, but trust me, it all starts with a very bold prediction.
I mean, can you imagine you're looking at a concert photo and your first thought isn't about the music or the dancing, but about macroeconomics? Well, that's what happened here. And this isn't just some random guess about fashion. Nope, this was laid out like a totally confident economic forecast. So how in the world does that work?
And that's really the big question, isn't it? Because on the surface, you've got these two worlds, global finance and K-pop stage outfits, that seem like they couldn't be farther apart. But what we're going to unpack today is an argument that they're actually linked in a pretty fascinating and maybe even a little bit worrying way. To really get the logic behind this whole K-pop prediction, we've got to go back in time. And I mean way back, to the Roaring '20s, to meet an economist who had a very unique idea. And this is it. It's called the Hemline Index. And the core idea is actually pretty simple. When people are feeling good, when they're optimistic and the economy's humming along, fashion gets a little bolder, a little more daring, and hemlines go up. But when times get tough and people are worried, fashion gets more conservative and hemlines, they drop. Now hold on, before you go and build a whole stock trading model based on Fashion Week, let's be super clear. When economists have actually put this to the test, the results are, well, let's just say they're mixed at best. The data shows maybe some correlation here and there, but trying to prove that one thing causes the other, it's a total mess. So it's really less of a serious predictive tool and more of a fun cultural barometer.
Okay, so the theory itself isn't a crystal ball, but the intuition behind it, that actually makes a lot of sense. You see, consumer confidence is this huge driver of the economy, and how people feel about the future, whether they're optimistic or pessimistic, that feeling often bubbles up in our culture, including in the clothes we wear. It's like a sentiment indicator.
Right, so if we know the classic Hemline Index is pretty shaky, why are we even talking about it with this K-pop photo? Well, because the person who made this prediction isn't just repeating George Taylor's old idea. They're actually putting forward a totally new and frankly much more interesting argument. And here's the first piece of this new thesis. And you know what? It's based on a really simple, undeniable physical fact. The trend has hit a wall, a hard limit. You literally just can't go any shorter than this. So let's just call this the ceiling argument. The trend of rising hemlines, if you think of it as a stand-in for market optimism, has literally run out of road. There's just nowhere else for it to go. So what happens when you smash into a hard ceiling like that? Well, in markets, just like in physics, you can't just keep pushing up forever. The only direction left to go is down. Economists have a term for this, reversion to the mean. It's the basic idea that a trend has to reverse course, simply because it can't possibly keep going. And you know, this whole hitting a ceiling idea, it isn't just happening in fashion. It actually lines up perfectly with what a lot of economists are seeing in the market right now. They call it a late cycle feel. And think about it. Stocks are valued incredibly high. Companies are pouring billions into AI but aren't really seeing the profits yet. It's getting harder for regular folks to get a loan, and those high interest rates are basically dragging on growth. All of these things are pointing to the idea that we might be right at a peak.
So, we've got the ceiling argument, and we've got the economic data to back it up. But the analysis actually goes another level deeper. It's not just about how short the skirt is. It's about what the piece of clothing itself has actually become.
So let's look closer at the actual design. The proportions are everything here. As the source points out, this thing isn't just a skirt that happens to be really short. Its size and where it's worn have basically turned it into something else entirely.
And this is the key insight. What we're really looking at is, structurally, just a very wide belt. Yeah, it has the appearance of a skirt, it keeps the form of a skirt, but its actual substance, its real function as clothing, has been almost completely stripped away. It's been hollowed out. And right here, this is the core metaphor for the economy today. On the surface, the form looks pretty good, right? We see positive GDP numbers, strong employment reports, but when you look at the substance, things like real wages being flat for a lot of people, or housing being completely unaffordable, or all the debt, the picture looks a whole lot thinner. There's not much actual material there. So it all boils down to this one powerful idea. In both the clothing and the economy, the appearance of health and prosperity is being kept up, but the underlying substance that gives it real stability and meaning,
That's spin hollowed out. Which brings us to this final image, which is, well, it's pretty unnerving. The argument here is that we're not just at a peak, we are in a full-on Wile E. Coyote moment, just sprinting on thin air, totally oblivious to the fact that the ground disappeared a few steps back.
And that leaves us with this one final provocative question. If this metaphor is right, if the substance really has vanished from under our feet, what does that moment of realization actually look like? What happens when we, as an economy, finally look down?